Alright, should be recording. Yep, I see the file. Going medieval, cues provided by Tinsley PR. And if there's some noise that comes through, I got the noise suppression on, but yeah, I can actually see that the mic is lighting, the audio interface is lighting up the green light that's picking up some noise. And I tried listening to it. There's only one thing it could have been. I did something to help with that, but that hasn't done it. There's a fan that's starting to, a case fan in my desktop that's starting to die. I have something to replace it, but I'm putting off doing that. I should just replace it, but I'm putting off. Okay, no. But yeah, I do not know what is picking up, because I've been doing like recordings every day for a while for a different channel, and I've not been noticing it doing this. So I genuinely have no idea what the noise is from. It could just be that the mic is deciding to be noisy today. That can happen. Okay. That's right, I don't... Okay, that's a little funny. I don't want to set this stuff up. Why do I feel like there was something I wanted to do? But yeah, I didn't want to put anything in here yet, because I don't want them trying to plant and then grow in the winter. But I still feel like there was something else that occurred to me I should do. Oh well. Oh yeah, I should also mention that. I was just thinking about the things I have noted. Should also mention it's the beginning of May, so we've got May the 4th Be With You sales. I know GOG and Steam are both doing theirs. Steam ends on the 5th, GOG on the 6th. It might actually be only a few hours difference though, because I think they both use quite different time zones. But yeah, so at least you got the weekend that you can look over things at both locations, both storefronts, and I can believe that Epic Games, I don't know how many they necessarily have, though. But they probably, I honestly haven't opened up Epic for a long time. Sorry, I just haven't. Wow. It did not like my doing that. Okay, you know, I'm gonna do this. At some point I may want to expand this, so I'm just clearing that area. I'm just trying to think about the Star Wars games. I do have, was it Fallen Order? Was that the new one? And one newer one, and then what's the one that's actually new, the latest of that? I don't remember. I haven't played those yet. I know I've got that first one of the two. That might be on Epic. I don't remember. Yeah, I don't know. I did see, Steam does have a larger selection of Star Wars games than GOG does. That includes Steam has all the Lego games it looked like. I don't know. I don't recall seeing the GOG having those, or at least having them on sale. But I know I've played Lego Star Wars and Lego Star Wars: The Original Trilogy. I do have the Skywalker Saga, which is supposed to be the games for, well, redone, but all of them through the sequel trilogy, which I don't think I would bother with myself, but you know, that's me. They weren't good movies. I don't trust that the Lego games even can save that. guess a couple the things I've noted. One I've seen talked about, and I've seen a little bit on. I haven't looked too closely because I don't follow console news much. But apparently, Microsoft has decided that they should increase the cost of their of the Xbox and. That's true. Actually shouldn't have gotten rid of all those. Yeah, that they've apparently decided to increase the cost of the Xbox and peripherals for it, which I don't know why. Well, no, because I mean, even if it's like, oh well, the tariffs, it's like, honestly, I kind of doubt that's a good reason, because you'd still normally expect prices on things to come down such that they don't need to worry about the tariffs for themselves. That they probably still are making more profit per sale, so, or at least not to the degree of, yeah, we're throwing an extra $100 on some of this stuff. Does not make sense to me. I wonder if it's more of they just see it as an opportunity to give a reason besides just, well, we want to increase our margins, that they're doing it. I don't know. It feels odd to do this. But then I did also see some people point out that Microsoft doesn't seem to quite want to be making the Xbox anymore. And it's like, I mean, in some ways I understand it, but in some ways it's also really stupid. Because there are people that the Xbox brand is important to them. If you abandon the brand, you're abandoning those people. And I could understand, though, if it were more of a, you know what, we're going to change the character of the Xbox to be more of just a specialized... I mean, it already is, as far as the hardware goes, a specialized mini PC. But they should just lean into that. If they want to start getting away from the Xbox brand, they should just lean into it, make them even more so these specialized mini PCs, but make it where, yeah, it can run Xbox games. It can, you put a disc in there, it has the proper means to decrypt it and access it, unlike a desktop. But then you make it where, yeah, you can install Steam on there, you can install Epic on there, you can install GOG on there, and then download the games like that. Play them that way. It's like, that's what... Why did it say something like a tree that appeared here? Anyway, yeah, that's what... If you want to get out of it, that's what you should do, because that would be leveraging their existing power and technology already to do that. And they could add in some other features as well, like because they kind of wanted to do this, like the Xbox One made sense for the naming. I know people make fun of it, but it makes sense because their desire was to have a one thing to rule it all. I mean, the idea was that this would be which connect to your television, and then you can play all your games on there. You can watch all your movies on there. You can also watch television through there, because if you had the right streaming system was set up for streaming television to it, you just watch it there. It was the one box to rule them all kind of thing. Now, unfortunately for them, they were a few years too early. I mean, it's also funny, the whole thing about them wanting to have that always-on DRM for everything kind of stuff, and like how Sony successfully mocked them for the whole, like, how do you give a game to a friend? And they're mocking that with the Xbox One. You'd have to go through this elaborate system of setting up friend codes and making sure you can hand off that way, and then, ensuring they actually got there and all that. And Sony was like, here's a disc. But it's really ironic, because even within the lifespan of the Xbox One, we've moved to having everything be so digital that you're not handing the discs over. So, and I also do remember from that controversy was when it occurred to me that, I mean, everything. I mean, the truth is we want DRM. Alright, we think we don't. There are people who say we don't, but that's a lie. Because fundamentally, there's DRM that protects us. A user account, name, and password is a form of DRM. It's it's managing our digital rights to our purchases. So, yeah, I mean, we can't just be like, oh, well, we don't want any of this. It's like, well, no, we actually do. We do use it. Alright, I'm going to do this. Get one of these ready, at least, so that if people get trapped, they can get out. But it is still, you know, while I will say that and argue that point, it's not to say that what Microsoft was initially planning to do with the Xbox One was a good idea. Well, no, the idea may have been good, but the implementation, I think, may still have been crap. It's been some years, so I don't quite remember all of it, but it is ultimately, I think we can expect, we will see. Actually, do we already have? Well, that's true. Nintendo's doing that now with the idea of how you can share your games with people. Yeah, people in your family. There's a way to, with the Switch 2, a way to share stuff. So it's like that is coming. Yeah. Good. They can both get out now. Although that's also true. Now that it's built, I don't actually need these. It's enclosed, so I don't need to worry about. Do need to do this though. Oh. Huh. Okay. Okay, so I've got the lanes for them. Oh yeah. Oh wait, no. The ladder should still stand there, right? I'll still hit cancel on this, just to be on the safe side. It could be noise on the line. I'm sorry, I'm just seeing the signal light continue to go on when it really should not be. But yeah, and there's also going back to, and this is another reason why I would think it doesn't make sense to me that it would be. There are other places they can do the manufacturing and assembly than China. That you wouldn't think the tariffs would be as bad. But there's also, it seemed odd to me that it's not only the consoles that they're increasing the price of, it's also the controllers and other peripherals. It's like everything? Because I mean, it seems odd to me, because the controllers, I would think, should be a relatively safe product. As far as there are plenty of PC gamers that are just going to be like, well, my preferred controller design is the Xbox controller. So you'd think, yeah, that's something you want to make sure is less expensive, because you want to ensure that those people are able to feel comfortable buying the Xbox controllers as opposed to buying a third-party controller. Like that's one that should be at least to my thinking, I can be wrong here, that you should be able to see yourself moving enough units that you should put an emphasis on keeping them less expensive, so you can encourage them being sold. Bring that to tweet. And yes, it is also this one. Okay. There. Yeah, so I don't know. This is also part of the reason why I am thinking they're just saw it as a convenient excuse to blame the price increases on something else when it is actually just what they want to do. The other piece of news I saw, and neither of these have I written up because one is more counsel, the other is, I just haven't taken the time to look more deeply into it, but it is troubling for various reasons. But apparently, a university, I don't remember which one, it's a German university though, decided to let an AI chatbot essentially onto Reddit in a specific place because they wanted to test to see how effective an AI chatbot would be at swaying people. And it's like, yeah, this is an interesting concept, but the way they did this is completely unethical. Because they didn't tell, no one on Reddit knew, they just let it go. Now, true, it was one of them had to read everything that the AI wanted to write on there. And then they put it on there and it's like, oh yeah, this is all fine. It's like, no, it's not. Because apparently in some cases it was pretending to be a survivor of some trauma or another, which is unethical because of how that is ultimately going to be abusing people's senses of sympathy and empathy. But it's also the fact that no one knew. I mean, it's IRB. Internal Review Board. I think that's what it stands for. When I took a psychology class 14 years ago now, something like that, one thing that we had to do was actually put together a survey, put together a study, and it wasn't anything significant, but we had to do that. I think it was for that class, maybe for a different one. Anyway, but we needed a requirement for that, for any such study, is that it is approved of. Is that it is approved of by a review board that we would be conducting it correctly, that would be ethically sound, things like that. There was no way this would have passed. I cannot imagine it would have passed. Because of the whole, people are actually, there can be situations where it is allowed that somebody doesn't know that they are in a study. But those are to be the least common. Like, that should be very rare. Now, I understand the whole, well, we didn't want them to know that they were talking with a chatbot because, that would skew it. It's like, okay, yeah, I got that. But to just be like, yeah, we didn't let them know at all that this was happening. That's a problem. That actually is a major problem. To not let them know that they were involved in a study. Because there would be people who would be like, yeah, I'm not interested in this. And other people would be like, oh, yeah, sure, bring it on. And also in that case, you can get away from the whole, is this AI or not? By making sure that you also have just people who are people also doing it. So that way the people reading, like, they could take part in, they could know that they're in the study, take part in it, and just not be aware if they are talking to or reading a story from this large language model or from a real person. There are ways you can do that. This was just straight up now lying. We're misrepresenting ourselves to people. Because it's also then, you run into another issue that, is it worth study? Yes, but not in this way. I get the whole you shouldn't trust everything on the internet, but it still is. There tends to be a certain assumption that when you are looking at something like a Reddit or Facebook or Twitter, whatever, some form of social media, there is an assumption this is a person. So then you're weighing it as far as, okay, is this a person lying to me? Or is this person telling the truth? But is this a person? Because you can then start assuming certain things about their own ethics, about their morality. Okay? Some of that might be experience with other people, some of it might be experience with yourself, rejection. but still is, you can start doing that. But when it's a machine, you can't apply those concepts in the same way. And that is basically my point there is you can't argue that, oh well, this shows just how powerful this is. It's like, but you create a situation where a human being might be inclined to believe it, that if they had some knowledge of it, of what was going on here, they would not be. They would not be fooled. Because I mean, think about a lot of the AI stuff that people encounter today, they know. I mean, it's like if you use something like ChatGPT, if you use something like Grok, Llama, Claude, what's any of the others, like that, there is the context that, well, yeah, I'm using it, I know that. Even the AI assist things that Google may give you when you do a search, it still is yes, that is composed by a machine. So it is, you have that ability to guard yourself. That is not there if you don't know that. Let's get rid of those. So yeah, I cannot believe that it would have passed any kind of IRB. Plus the idea that it would impersonate being a survivor of this or that experience. Let's say it in a positive way, in a lighter way. That also, I cannot, I mean, I would think if I were involved in such a study, even if it were being done this way that I find unethical, the moment the thing would be like, oh yeah, I'm going to start impersonating that, I'm going right, I'm taking that prompt, I'm going to the IRB, and I'm saying, he wants us to do this, I don't think we should. And see what the IRB says, because I could believe plenty of them would be like, no, you cannot do that. You cannot allow that. But I do understand the concept of, can an AI manipulate people, essentially, to get them to change their minds. And supposedly it was like 6 times more effective at changing minds. But again, it kind of comes back to that thing that I was talking about with we can expect certain ethics, certain morality from people that you can't expect from a machine. A machine will speak with complete confidence because it doesn't know how to not be confident. Yeah, it might say, yeah, I'm not entirely sure about this, but it's still, the language would be the same as, I know exactly what I'm saying. So, whereas a person, we will say things differently. Like, just when talking, if somebody pauses, as I know I do, that's in part because, like, I'm trying to choose my words, I'm trying to figure out the best words, or I'm rethinking the point. That is it is a verbal / non-verbal, is a verbal cue that there is consideration going into this that might be, and then also inflection of the voice to say that I am somewhat uncertain. And AI isn't going to do that. So, yeah, I mean, and it's also, it will give equal significance to a bold-faced lie and something that is true. So again, it's AI can be the ultimate liar. So being 6 times more effective, it's like, well, yeah, that makes sense because it doesn't necessarily understand the concept of lying in such a way that it would avoid it, or would make some sort of mistake that it would then be caught. Yeah. Because, I mean, there's some people that they can tell a great story such that you believe it, even if it is nonsense. But that's not everyone. AI, because of how it is already needing to impersonate people, and what information it's able to apply, and how it can... an AI should, in theory, have a memory of the prior prompts, at least for something like this. You know, its prior responses. That would make it very powerful for deceiving people. The heck? Okay, I got no idea what it thinks is allowed. I'm just gonna do that. And I couldn't select it either. I was like, that was very weird. You know, I'm also gonna do that. Like, take it down another level so that way I can start going out. Like, yeah, that is one thing. They really... It is very annoying how in this game it's set up that you can't really, excuse me. You can't just have a basement that extends out. You can't have, like, a half-height thing here for storage. Yeah. Also, one other thing I want to point out with the AI is that, because I have kind of sort of done this with an AI where it was asking some questions, and I managed to actually convince it I was right. Even though it was saying, well, no, that's not exactly true, and I kept asking questions like, well, yeah, what you're saying is actually true. That is an accurate way to describe it. And it's like, okay. It kind of also proves the point of, you know, maybe I shouldn't rely on this too much. I mean, I will use them for... like just asking basic questions where it's, what was it the other day? It was like I just couldn't remember the term for something, so I started asking and say, oh yeah, that's this. It's like, okay, good. Now can you give me this additional information that it's like I don't quite remember this aspect to it, where it's like I remember pieces of it, so I could describe it and then it's helping me fill in the pieces. Like that, I think is okay. But some other stuff, it's no, not what I would want to trust. And it's also, even if it is some stuff it told me was wrong, if it gives me the terms, I can look that up another way to confirm, so it's not that bad. You know, if I had to guess, part of the reason why the FPS is going that low is I had a lot of stuff here. But it still is the whole... They got no appropriate means of filtering this so that I could start slaughtering them intelligently. I'm sorry, but it will be so interesting whenever this game reaches 1.0, and I review it. I don't know when that'll be. I am promising I will do my best to do a review then, but if this isn't overhauled, okay, I want the jobs thing overhauled, but if that doesn't, it's still okay, I'm going to complain that like hell about it and criticize it deeply, but I can't criticize that as far as well, it should be this way. No, that's going to be more of well, this is just terrible. And like here's the criticisms for it, and here's why it's very obvious that this is terrible design. But I can't necessarily argue this is what it should be, because that gets to be unfair. I don't mind talking about that here, but it shouldn't be in a written review. However, this is different. This I would happily criticize in detail for what it should be, and that's because this is a table. Basically a table in a database. I have enough experience working with them, right? Because I have to do that in my job. And I do it for some other things as well. So I know that if you could just set that up so that you could filter down to show me all the asses, to group by male and female, to do it by a certain age, or rather mature or young, okay? Do stuff like that. Set it up so that I can do a filter so that every cattle that is so old should be marked for slaughter. But to always maintain a minimum of, say, 2 female and 2 male, well, 2 mature female, 2 mature male, regardless of how old they are. That's doable, okay? That's absolutely doable. Here, let me just think. That would be... if it's in sequel, I'd want to use, like, the top 2. Well, selecting... Hey, I'm just thinking, would that be... Okay, so yeah, that's one way that could be done. It's not necessarily the most elegant way, but it could work. Where you have the query generate numbers where the case is when young, it's zero. Well, zero or infinite, whichever, so they won't be, so we can exclude that. Okay. And then you would want to, well, yeah, I guess that would make the most sense. If young, do this. If mature, then order by age, ascending, so the youngest are what you'd select, and then just be like top 2. And make sure that those are never selected, cannot be selected for slaughter automatically. So like at the 3rd youngest and older, those are the ones that are allowed to be slaughtered. Well, that's the pool for slaughtering, not to guarantee that they are slaughtered. It's like, oh yeah, immediately do that. No. We don't need to do that level of population control. But just, but to have it selected in such a way, and I'm just trying to think how would, I guess you could mark the 2 youngest, those as having like put a protected status on them so they can't be slaughtered. And then you can do a query that then looks at, okay, of the mature ones that are not marked protected, those above this age should be automatically marked for slaughter. That is definitely something that would be doable in SQL. It might be a little bit messy, but it is completely doable. And I have experience with SQL. I do have experience with SQL, but that doesn't mean I am a master of it. For what I need to do, I'm pretty damn good, I think. But, well, at least SQLite. But, yeah, it's just, yeah. But there are definitely, I don't know how much I want to do it. Well, yeah, sure, let's do that. But it is also, like, you need it. Right, it is a joke, the fact that I can't be like, just show me the cattle. Okay, yeah, 4 years? And also that you can't, like, sort by animal, then sort by age. You can't do that. Yeah, let's just do those 2. I'm not going to bother with the chickens for now. Although I have got a lot of them. Actually, I should start killing them. Okay, not that one. Wow, that's kind of interesting. So, the oldest of the chickens, getting rid of that. I do not really want to mess with the deer. Holy crap. Okay. You know what? Yeah, those 2 can go. I'm gonna have plenty of meat this winter. Yeah, goats should be small enough to not be a problem. Okay, and I was marking these incorrectly. There, okay. So that should be plenty. Should be plenty of meat. Yeah, that does remind me of something I saw the other day. Maybe a week or 2 ago, somebody making the point that when people try to say, you know, every time you eat a steak, a cow had to die, it's like, well, actually no, because one cow can produce enough steak to feed a person for more than a year, if it's 1 steak a day. It's like, it's actually very efficient. Now, there's no way that's accurate for this game because it's not a simulation. It's the speed at which you get cows is kind of absurd as well, or any of the livestock. So, but yeah, as I was saying, because there are ways to do, there should be ways to do filtering and do queries on this, and then automate some stuff. The fact it isn't, if we ever get to, whenever we get to version 1, by it not being, if it is not prepared, I will go specific on that, because that is clearly a table that queries on, even if it's not SQL, it's still, because of the presentation of data there, it is absolutely reasonable to have algorithms and have the ability for the user to create algorithms to do these things, to control these things. The absence of them, I do not consider acceptable. And some of it is definitely and I acknowledge that some of this is I do get obsessive over technical stuff, and I've said things like this before, I'll say it again, that is something if I worked at the company, Foxy Voxel, I would not, I would be pushing, we cannot go to 1.0 without changing that, we can't go to 1.0 without fixing this, we can't do this, I'd be pushing that. And I get the whole, that is kind of being an asshole, but it still is an element of that isn't, this stuff is a major enough, this is a problem, it shouldn't, we can do that better, we should be doing it better. And it's been in early access for how many years now, and we're still not getting that? Because it's like, I would have no reason to be patient with it. As I said, this is a little different, because while yes, there are major problems with this, there are so many different ways that it could be solved. My solution that I've talked about before, I can't say that's what it needs to be. The problems with this, though, are, or rather, the possible solutions, the features associated with it, are easy enough to construct based on what is already present, that it ceases to be, to me, I shouldn't talk out of turn. It's like, no, there's enough there, I can criticize that as much as I want. Just trying to think what would be something else kind of like that from when I'm doing criticisms of books. I guess it would kind of be like, because I will criticize books as far as, like what I would do, and in some ways that's not fair, because everybody writes in their own way and to their own purposes, so it's not always fair to do that, but at the same time, I think that, well, yeah, it is more fair there because I've written books where it's, I'm not speaking out of a lack of experience. I do have experience doing quality assurance on video games, so I do have experience here. The experience reviewing as well. It's like I do have some qualifications to talk. I have more qualifications when talking about when criticizing a book. But I'm still just trying to think, do I have a good example of something in a story where it's like, yeah, no, this is really bad, it shouldn't be done this way. Or you gave me pieces. You know what, that in a way works. That is actually one example that does kind of work. I went through the novelizations of the Star Wars films, not the sequel films. I don't even know if they have novelizations. I'm not touching those. But one of the things in Attack the Clones that, as I'm reading it, I was recognizing there was a great potential for something. I was like, oh, please do this, please do this, please do this. It would not align with the movies that well, but please do this, please do this. It would be so much better. That's in Attack the Clones. Dooku should have been not the apprentice. That for the bulk of how that was written, you can believe that he is a third party. That when he talks about how he learned that Sidious exists and is manipulating the Senate, that he is in fact trying to form the Separatist group in order to interfere with Sidious's plans, whatever they are. And doing that is something that he has the charisma for, and he has the wealth behind him to enable. That would have been very reasonable and make him a very, very interesting character then. Because it allows you to sympathize with him even though he is still a bad guy. It's just, he's a third-party bad guy at this point. But it also, when you were talking with some other characters in the book, when Obi-Wan is talking with the Master Archivist at the Jedi Temple, they have statues, thus, of all of the fallen, however many, which are Jedi that left the Order, and one of them is Dooku, and Obi-Wan is looking at that and thinking about it. By the way, this is also would have been a great moment for Obi-Wan to acknowledge that Qui-Gon was Dooku's Padawan, but nope, they say that for so many chapters later. It's like, and then it was like a surprise to Obi-Wan. It's like, you should have known the entire time. But in any case, the Archivist talks to him and talks about how, yes, he never liked the situation with the Senate. That he never liked how the Jedi existed in a way that meant... Oh, I didn't even realize that. Alright. Existed in a way that made them so subservient to the Senate that the Senate's corruption would then potentially corrupt the Jedi. Like, there was talk about this, and that it's basically him leaving the Jedi Order was him believing that it's not possible to repair the wounds to undo the corruption from within the system. Okay, that's basically what he felt, and that's why he left. And that's what's being described by the Archivist, that would have known him for years, right, for a very long time, which now leads to this problem of, well, are we to believe that at this point Dooku was lying? Like, this would have been more than a decade ago. Are we to believe that he was lying even then, trying to manipulate people so that his betrayal would seem one thing when it's something else? Or is it that, no, this is actually... And also it becomes a problem of, okay, what was he in relationship with Maul then? Because 10 years prior to Attack the Clones, Maul was the apprentice. Where was Dooku for that? So it's like, you know, that I criticized that book, because, like, no, this is not how it should have been, because with him just being the apprentice, because you're setting things up that he would have had to have been lying earlier than he could have been the apprentice. And what you're setting up, what you're saying was his character, is something that would have seen him hating Sidious, because Sidious was the very thing he hated, the corruption of the Senate. It's the very thing he is supposed to hate, and yet you're saying that no, that's who he's serving. I mean, just you have to then swing his character so heavily against what's already been described for him. Like that, oh yeah, I criticized the hell out of that, because it needed to be criticized. And it also is such a more interesting story to me if it is Dooku is a third party that doesn't know Sidious is Palpatine, just as way that Sidious exists and all that, and because then you can use that to make Sidious more interesting as well. Yeah, I think I'll be stopping after this day. Because Sidious is a lousy mastermind. He really is. He gets lucky more than he's good at planning anything. And Attack the Clones and Revenge of the Sith both expose that. Because, I mean, it's like, for 10 years, the clone army is being made, and so for 10 years, the existence of Kamino is hidden, and no one ever realizes. I mean, it's like, all it would take is one Jedi to realize, hey, there's a missing system on the maps. Let's investigate this. They'll go there and say, oh, yes, we've been expecting you to inspect the clone. What? I mean, everything gets exposed then, earlier than Palpatine is prepared for it. It's a lousy plan. It really is. Plus, we don't know where the ships came from. I mean, there's so many things that are wrong with his plan that it makes no sense. Anyhow, if you have Dooku throwing things off for Palpatine, now you see him having to adapt, having to scramble, where things aren't going his way. He's not lucky. He needs to rely on his own abilities. That would have been so much better, but that's not what happens. Like, to me, my headcanon is Dooku should not have been the apprentice. He should not have known it was Palpatine. Not until, like, the beginning of Revenge of the Sith. And Palpatine himself could actually expose himself when being held in that chamber, where Anakin and Obi-Wan come to rescue him. But that have it turn out that Grievous is actually Palpatine's servant. So that Grievous has been brought up in the Separatist movement by Dooku, but helping Palpatine. So now Grievous is like moving more and more military control to himself. So the political control is Dooku's. So that way Dooku thinks he's still in power, but no. Grievous is taking more and more for himself, and then can orchestrate it so Dooku is caught and will be killed. So that way he can't have the Separatists step down, and now Palpatine is in control of both. That would have been so much better, but no. Nope. It's just, not everything was part of my plan. It's a lousy plan. You're completely dependent on these variables that are beyond your control. Because there's also stuff like, in Attack of the Clones, in the novelization, there is nothing about any... What the heck is this? There's nothing about the negotiations with the Separatists. It basically is not happening. You know, because, I mean, even if they say, oh yeah, negotiations are failing, it's like, we don't have any information on negotiations, though. Like, there's actually no evidence that they are occurring. And one thing that should have been a point, and again, this would have made things more interesting. At one point, Padme and Anakin are talking, and it's stated that Padme could have allowed the people to amend the Constitution of Naboo so she could get more than 2 terms as Queen of Naboo. She was against that. It's like, no, rule of law, that matters a lot to me. I want it to be this. I want to stay here. Well, no, I want it to stay as it is. I'll step down and continue to serve it another way. But the point is also made, Palpatine has actually outserved his terms as Supreme Chancellor of the Senate. But because of there being emergencies, he hasn't left. Well, they should have taken advantage of that in the story, then. With having... with having the point made that the Separatists would be like, you know what? We will more urgently, more sincerely negotiate with you if he's removed. Because that is an example of the corruption we are against. And the thing is, at that point, and it's also when Dooku and Padme are talking, Dooku could use that to sway her that he is not a good guy. The Senate is corrupt. And even though she's like, well, yes, but I believe that we should try to correct it from within. Be like, but you're allowing him to break the law. You say that's important to you. Have you ever asked him to step down? He is from your world. He used to serve you as ambassador. Have you asked him, as a friend and former superior, it's like former leader of his people, have you asked him to give up the power that he is not supposed to have anymore? It's like, you could do things with that. It would have been so much more interesting and raise Dooku up to a new level to make Padme a little bit more conflicted and help you understand that it's not that the Separatists are bad, not wholly. Some of it, yes, they are bad. But it's like, you could do so much interesting stuff, and they didn't. They didn't do that. Because, like, now Dooku's the apprentice. And it's like, this is really lousy. Because it's also, I would have loved it if it was, no, Dooku's not the apprentice. That Palpatine has viewed Anakin as his apprentice since Maul was killed. Because he recognized what Anakin was and the potential for Anakin is like this whole time. Because it is. Palpatine does manipulate Anakin by trying to be his friend, try to be a father figure to him for those 10 to 12, 13 years, if you want to go all the way from Phantom Menace to Revenge of the Sith. If you view it that way, then it actually makes a lot of sense that he is long playing Anakin is my apprentice. That would have been so much better, so much more interesting. But no. Nope. And I don't mind being critical of that. And sharing that that's what I believe should have happened. But that is headcanon stuff, so it's not really fair to hold that completely against the story. I think it's completely fair for me to share that. But it's also, as I said, there is a setup with Dooku that he is deeply bothered, and the reason he left the Jedi Order is the corruption of the Senate. That is an explanation for him to never side with Sidious, and yet you have him at the end. Oh yes, my master, what is the next thing we shall do? Or everything has gone exactly as you predicted. It's like, where was his fall then from what he had been originally? It's like there's nothing. It is absent, and that is a very weak aspect of that story. Yeah. So it is kind of like this, where it's like you did give me the pieces to see that, with that overview table, you gave me the pieces to see that there's potential here, and you are not delivering on it. So the pieces either shouldn't be there, so I can't do that, or no, I'm going to go at you for this is what you should be doing. Okay. Enough of my blathering. Yeah, I guess I'll just see you next time. Wait, yeah, this was part 103. Wow. I've been in this for that long. See you next time.